What's the role of the church, and what does it have to do with God's dream to get people to come to church?
Yeah. The mission of the church, I think most succinctly, would be to pay attention to what God is up to in your particular context and partner with God in that. And name where we see God at work, and celebrate it. Celebrate it with those that have come to be a part of our community and those are around our worshiping communities. I think that's what the mission of the church is. Notice what God is doing, name it, celebrate it, and participate with it.
I mean, I think the church's role is to be the body of Christ. So the church's job is to figure out what that means, what it means to be the church. I think we get caught up a lot in what the church needs to do and trying to figure out what the church needs to do. I think we've become detached from who we really are or who we need to be. So the church's job is to keep living that cycle and becoming who the church is supposed to be, this, beloved community, this place of healing, place that acknowledges suffering and walks with people through suffering and is always pointing toward and returning to love.
I mean, I more and more feel like the role of the church is to be that beloved community that expresses that love and shows that love.
If you come to...
I was gonna say, and so what I'm trying to do, is knock down I'm trying to knock down those walls. We've got those signs that say the Episcopal Church welcomes you. And sometimes I read the unwritten subtext, the Episcopal Church welcomes you to be just like us. I feel like the stuff is happening out there. And you can talk about that in the very small, in terms of the self. I feel like the love is out there and I'm gonna participate in it. Or you can get that to a really big, community of love, like a parish, right? The stuff is happening out there. The work of the gospel is happening out there. And when we build walls around ourselves, we're gonna miss some of it. In fact, we might miss a lot of it. And so the role of the church is to be that beloved community that can just journey with people wherever they are. And if the last thing we should do is be thinking about we're gonna do this to get people to come worship with us. You're already doomed to failure if that's where you start. But if we can think, this person is a beloved child of God, created in the image of God, just like I am, and I can spend some time with that person and learn from them and grow from them, and hopefully there's a mutuality there. We can enter into this relationship. As I say, lives are transformed. I feel like my job as agent of the church in some ways is to be the one pointing to that. When I see it happen, when I see resurrection, when I see those burning bushes out there, when I see people's lives transformed, is to point to it and say, here it is, right? So that we can get better, all of us get better at seeing it. Me too, get better at seeing it. I know this through that great mystic Bruce Lee, but I understand that he's quoting Buddha there, that it's like a finger pointing at the moon. Don't concentrate on the finger or you will miss all that heavenly glory. And I feel like in some ways, we can get caught up looking at how great this finger is and forget that it's pointing to a bigger reality, and a much better reality.
What's the bigger reality that we're missing out on?
It's the love, man. I feel like as a world, we're created in the image of God as people and loved unconditionally by God. And boy, have we forgotten about that. We treat each other so poorly, so poorly. And so I feel like that's what we're missing out on. And it's not like the church has it and the world doesn't. We're all missing out on that.
How do you get them back to church, though?
I don't get them back to church.
Cut. That's not very missional.
I go be with them. which I need to do more of.
But like, how many do you have like within 9 months or 12 months before they're tithing? Like, what's?
I don't, honestly, I don't. Tithing to what?
Just stay in the church.
I don't care if they ever come to a worship service at our church. I don't care if they ever, you know, I care that they've seen me show up there and they've noticed that I have a collar on, and something in that says to them, oh, the church showed up. Yeah.
I think that the role of the church is to be part of God's mission in the world. But
What's God's dream again?
I think God's dream is for us to spread the kind of love and acceptance and compassion that most of us most long for. And I think the way in which the church participates in that is by connecting to those who are different from us, to connecting to those who can teach us about how to love. And we can't learn that by only being around people who see the world the way we do.
Missional has become a very popular word. It's in many Christian circles, but if you go back to some of the theologians that were started initially coining and using the term, it's this idea that for generations we've presumed that God is at work in this place. When we come together at this table, when we come together to worship, that is where God is at work. And these folks came along, these theologians like David Bosch and Leslie Newbegin came around saying, God is not simply at work in these places, in these holy and sacred places. God is at work there, but God is also present and at work in our neighborhoods, in our communities. And the task of when we come together on Sundays, the task of that work is to reframe how we look at the rest of life, so that we can go out into our communities, into our workplace, and see those places with a different set of like lenses to see those places, looking for where God is already at work in those places. I think that we do not give enough thought to that one image when Jesus is crucified on the cross, and we're told that the temple veil in the Hebrew temple, the Jewish temple, that veil is torn. This place that was supposed to designate the most holy of holies, where God's presence was felt most intently, was in this place. And yet what Jesus was doing, what was happening to Jesus, somehow was to communicate to us that most palpable, intimate, intense experience of God was no longer going to be regulated to this one place, but that God's presence, God's power could be felt, seen, participated in anywhere. And the Pentecost is icing on the cake of that. The Pentecost story is just an example of like, yeah, this is actually happening, that God's presence is everywhere. So I think that this idea of missional, while it's used in a lot of different ways, I think at its core, it's this idea that God is at work in our communities. God is at work in our neighborhoods. God is there, and we can't discount that. They are holy places. They are holy, it is holy work. Whether you're in school, whether you're a stay-at-home parent, no matter where you work, no matter where you live, no matter where you find yourself, God is present there. And if that is true, if we're convinced of that, how does that change how we be people of faith? How does that change how we be Christian? How do we treat that as holy? If we presume that God is going to meet me in this conversation with a complete stranger who I ideologically disagree with so strongly. if that's just as holy as when I enter a sanctuary, enter a church building, what does that mean? What does that ask of me in that circumstance? What am I supposed to take out of that situation? And how do I treat that person if I'm convinced that God may just as well speak to me through that person than the sermon on Sunday morning?
What gives you hope about the news that God might be everywhere?
That it's true, and that as dark as things can be at times, that there's hope, that there's light, and if we listen and we watch, and we're willing to take risk and be braver than we feel like we can be, that maybe we can participate in that good news happening all around us.
What are non-churchy people teaching you or revealing you or introducing you to Christ that you didn't have eyes or ears for before?
They don't need what we've been selling, because we've been selling church. Show up on Sunday, come to Bible study, come be a part of us. They don't need that. They need God. I think they have God. I think they need love. They need us to love them. But they don't need to come to church for us to love them. I need to go to court to love them, you know? I need to sit with them when they're having conversations about what's happening to our city, and it doesn't need to be a conversation that we hosted at the church.
What does going to court have to do with salvation or God's dream?
Walk with each other. Be there with each other through struggles. Fight against injustice, stand up against systems of oppression, even if you're not seeing that system even get any kinks in it. Sometimes it feels like. But we're still called to stand with each other.
Here's what I know. When I was a priest in a congregation, I now work at the church-wide level for the Episcopal Church, but when I was a priest in a congregation, we had fantastic worship. We had a band. We transformed this space at the cathedral in Boston, and it's called The Crossing. And folks would be in that circle receiving Eucharist and would be crying every Thursday. We met Thursday nights, so every Thursday somebody was crying. Sometimes it was me. But we would go out and we would do a cleanup on the riverbank with other folks who had nothing to do with faith. And the joy we felt together. It's oh, and then when we would come back to worship after that, the next week, we're I feel more connected to you. And it's God is using those moments when we give ourselves away. God is actually using those moments to kind of knit us more closely with each other and with all of creation. So I think what church can do is church can create the opportunities where I come over and over again to realize, honey, this is not about you. This is about the circle of people that you did not choose. You would not have chosen necessarily. This particular group of people, there's always somebody in there where you're oh God. And that's why you're here. But anyway, church is this circle, this blessed broken circle where God gets to take all of us, call us out of ourselves, knit us into something more, and then give us away. Just keep giving us away. Church is actually not
ultimately about how I come and feel good, how I come and feel comfortable. I mean, all of that is important. The pastoral element is so important, but it's important as a way to heal us enough that we can become healers. It's important as a way that we feel centered enough that we can then be almost blown apart and know that we can come back to a center again. Does that make sense?
No, Stephanie. Who wins? Okay, who wins? That's all I want to know.
Who's on top?
You freaking hippie.
I gotta know who's on top. Give it away. What else is there? Like, how can you be Christian? How can you wear a cross and not understand that it's all about giving it away?